Welcome to Becoming a Principal, the podcast for aspiring educational leaders. I'm Jordan.
I'm Matt. Our mission is to inspire and support educators considering leadership roles so they can add value to the communities they serve.
How's it going?
Hey, we're trying something new today.
We certainly are trying something new. This is new territory here.
And I should say, we've had this on our mind,
We have.
To try this live video using the service that you found. And we fully didn't intend to do it this week in this way. But this is what we're doing.
Yeah, we're trying it because we have a few people coming up that we've reached out to that are going to be like sort of virtual guests. And we figured we would try some video at some point. So here we are trying some video. I know one day we thought about, maybe having video when we're in the actual same location, but just for sake of efficiency, we're in different locations today, and some future guests that we have lined up will probably be in the same predicament here in this like virtual environment.
Okay, well said. So it was a quick week. It feels like it was Monday yesterday, and it's no longer that. It's the weekend. But I've talked to a couple people this week, Jordan, and they were telling me that they're interested in high school administration. And actually, a couple of them mentioned that they've been listening to the pod. So pressure's on now, But the conversation that we were having is, what do they do? So here it is, it was end of November, beginning of December, and they're talking about becoming a high school administrator. And our board application window for that role isn't open right now. So when somebody's waiting or somebody's starting to express interest in becoming an administrator, what do you think they should get up to? Or what sort of advice do you have for them? How can they prepare themselves as they're in waiting for, having that interview, or even taking, in Ontario, we have to take a principal qualification course. Neither of them have done that yet. But, so there's so many things. But what should their mindset be, or what should their focus be, do you think?
Yeah, I think if people are thinking about getting into the role of administrator, I think it's, definitely good to like search for information about it. First of all, I know I did. Absolutely. I searched online. I spoke to people that might've been in the role that I had a connection with. Definitely try and establish a network of people that you can ask real questions to. I think sometimes it's hard when you're telling somebody else, maybe your boss in a certain setting, that you want to be, basically you kind of want their job. It could be awkward if the relationship isn't great. And that might be a hard sort of topic to broach for some people. I feel that some people, it's not a problem. It's easy for them to talk to anybody. And for others, that might be hold their cards a little closer to their vest, or maybe not quite as sure yet. They might not want to have that conversation with their direct supervisor. So I would say try and find some people that maybe aren't in your building, that are going through a similar experience, or that are in a role that you are looking to get into, to get a bit more information. You can always listen to a podcast. I mean, that's not a bad idea either. But I do think getting some time to speak with people that are currently doing the role that are relatable to you. I think for me, when I saw some people that were doing the role that, for all intents and purposes, kind of looked and felt more like what I thought I might look and feel like in that role, it was easier just to kind of visualize it for myself, to understand or to make it possible for me to think that I could actually do that job. So there are definitely some people, that I can see out there that are it's not that they're on the fence. They're just not quite sure because they don't have maybe as much information as they need to keep pushing forward. So obviously, besides reaching out to people, I think you want to just continue to be a leader in the space that you're in. That's a big one, because you're gonna have to do that anyway when you transition to an administrative role, and just trying to really fully be the best version of yourself in that role and lead people. Because, we have our classes and stuff like that, but leading people is a skill that we are going to need as an administrator, or otherwise if you're moving out of a teaching role. So just finding a way to continue leading the people that you are working with in your individual circumstance. What do you think about that?
Well, you said a lot there that I agree with. I just want to unpack some of that a bit more, I guess. So first off, you're talking about really finding a mentor, or connecting with people who are just a little bit ahead of you. And I can't remember who I should give credit to, but I know I read it somewhere recently that the best mentors are the people who are just ahead of you in whatever stage you're in. They're just a couple of steps ahead of you. So if you're thinking about administration, maybe connecting with somebody who's new to the role, I think would be the best. And I agree with what you said there, in how you feel like you would want to lead too. So connecting with somebody who, you don't feel like your leadership style or leadership skill, this time anyway, aligned with their own philosophy or the way they lead, maybe that's not as fruitful of a conversation. Not that you shouldn't be learning from that person, but I just wonder about, like you said, connecting with somebody who just a couple of rungs further on in their leadership journey. And what sort of questions do you think that they should ask them? What sort of
Yeah,
conversation do you think
I
they
think
should have?
Yeah, I think if you are already considering the role, you might, again, I think it's based on your own unique situation. I know people asked me when I started, like, how are you handling that with like time management? They're asking about time management since I have a young family and my wife is also professional, so our time is very limited, I guess, to pursue some of the things that we've been pursuing. So people are curious about that. How do we balance the demands of the role versus being a great family person? And that just comes from the stage that they're in. So that might align for some people why they're asking me that question. But it's definitely, I think it's preparing your mind and you're setting up your life so you feel like you can actually do the job that's out there. I think there's a misconception that, the job can be like all encompassing, and it sure can in some ways if you let it. But I think people are curious about how maybe you and I sort of manage the demands of that job differently than we would as an educator. Because I think people that are going into the role believe that there is a difference. There's a perception that there is a difference on the demand for time. Some of the perception that we don't get to do some fun things sometimes, and that's some of the worry that some people have when they're thinking about kind of crossing that line, so to speak, into a different world of administration. They might not be sure what that is going to feel like for them. So speaking again to someone that is, again, relatable to you is really important, and asking those particulars, like, what time does it? People ask, what time are you done? What time do you shut it off for the night? And I'll say it varies, right? But they're asking because they're like, how am I going to manage this when I, go do that? And I think it's just important to ask questions that really pertain to your situation. And some people have different skill sets as well, right? Like you might have people that are really good at a certain thing that'll just translate very easily to a role of administrator. But some other people might have skill sets where they feel they see in you that you have a strength and they have a deficiency, and they're wondering how they're going to close that gap as well. So I think it really does depend on the individual person. Like to say that there's like one way to do this job, it's like that's not a fair thing to say at all. So I think people just need to have like a good understanding of their own skill set, and then trying to find a way to like figure out what the gaps are going to be when they are transitioning and asking those kind of questions. But that requires them being a little bit vulnerable, right? And I don't know if you had experience doing that when you were coming up, I guess, when you're transitioning to administrator. But if you did, like, what kind of questions might have you been asking people?
Yeah, and I think it's just gonna go what you're sharing, and actually the types of questions that I get. A lot of it is about time. You're thinking that you're wondering what kind of disruption it's gonna have to your life, I suppose, right? I think that's a big one on everyone's mind because when you're teaching, you're certainly you get into a routine. The first few years of teaching are hard, and you continue to learn, and it just gets easier, right? And you learn how to manage your time better and prepare for the next day and things like that. And I think that, again, you're going into the unknown a little bit. So there's a lot of questions over what's the time commitment look like? What, like you said, what time are you turning it off? What time do you go home at the end of the day? Things like that, right? And I think, a big piece to that conversation that you need to have too is if you have a partner or a family, I think you have to include them in that conversation as to, my day to day might look a little bit different. There are some days where I'm going to be able to go home at the time that I'm expected to. And then there are other days that you kind of need a backup. It doesn't happen that often, to be honest, to me. But there's a few times where you're kind of on the fly thinking like you have to get somebody to pick up your kids, right? Because you're just not able to make it because something came up at school, right? So I think that's like the number one concern people have. And then the other thing is like just learning about the role itself. I think if you can connect with somebody again who's just a little bit ahead of you, maybe a new administrator, ask them how they're feeling, what does their day-to-day look like, and even a excellent opportunity could be spending time with that person throughout the day. Maybe you have a prep. Maybe you can sit with them for an hour and see what they're doing for that hour. Maybe over the course of a year, and then you get a different glimpse into what the day looks like just over a longer period of time. So it's not just like that little snapshot. But I think it's really important to have that conversation with new administrator. And then the other piece, I think, to this is where do you see yourself going? Like, do you have any future goals? So if you're thinking you want to become a vice principal and you want to get into that role and you're just going to see and learn learn the role and see where it goes, that's great. If your goal is to become a principal one day, I think it would be great to start having those conversations early with people maybe who are new to that principal role or who are experienced as well, and asking them what that is like. Because, Jordan, as you know, having those both those roles now, vice principal and a principal roles, they're quite different. There's a lot of overlap for sure from how you support us and how when we get involved in the school, but certainly the roles are different in a school as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point about thinking about future goals that might be not quite immediate term, but middle term to longer term goals. If you are someone that is wanting to be a principal and seeking a vice principal position first, I mean, I'm of the mindset that anyone that's going to enter the vice principal role, I'm hoping as someone who's on the other end of that, hiring people, I would hope that anyone that's going to a role of vice principal would want to be a principal, you know, at some point. I would hope. I'm not sure if that's everybody's situation, but in most cases, that's usually the path. So I would say that I'm thinking about vice principals in a way, maybe because that's my mindset, that they're going to be future principals. So that orients how I help and support people that are in the vice principal role as well. And they are different, but I really like what you said about someone who's like kind of just a bit ahead of you and getting information from those people because they're right in the middle of it. I think the part that we have done with the podcast, really the goal of it was to kind of mimic what you're saying there, having a conversation with some random people, you and I, about those kinds of things for people that might be discerning and harder to have those conversations in person, right? I think that's what was lacking when I was interested is some good information on what that transition part felt like and the early years of that, right? Less so than, the later years, whatever, established principles. This podcast isn't necessarily for, someone that's 5-10 years in the principalship. It's for people that are discerning and new leaders because this is a really tough time. And a lot of the information that we get are from experienced people that are 10 years down the road, right? And they have great knowledge they've acquired over time, but hearing from people right in the middle of it is different, right? It's a bit more raw, real. Like I know I have a tendency to look back on things with like a rosy picture, right? But when it's happening in real time, and you and I are here commenting on these things, you're getting a bit more of the raw side of things, which is going to help people discern what they feel the role is for them, and that's part of it. And also celebrating the joys. I think looking back on things, we don't always, the highs and lows kind of like level out, but we're experiencing some great highs too, like in the middle of what might feel like very much busyness or difficult challenges that we have, but there's some wonderful things that we get to celebrate often. I think people need to see that too and hear from people that are like, even though they're just getting their feet under them, they're just starting out down this path of school leadership. Yes, it's hard, but there's also some really amazing things that you get to do and celebrate along the way. So, yeah, I think again, so for you, I know, we've talked about career aspirations as well. And, we feel like for sure, maybe principal might not be the end for you or I. At some point, we might see something even more than that at some point. But if we're not at that stage right now, we're not really seeking that type of mentor at that point. And we're like right now, for me anyway, I can't speak for you, but I'm looking to kind of some experienced principals and I'm watching them. That's who I'm watching because I'm not that experienced of a principal yet. I'm going to be, and I'm watching how they work. So they're just a little bit ahead of me, a bit more experience, a bit more time, a bit more tested, and what I'm learning from them is very valuable. So yeah,
Okay, I want to.
steps ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I love that perspective. I want to pack two more things that you said in your intro. One of them being is when should you let your principal or your supervisor know that you're interested in the role? Like I think that is an important thing that if you're starting to discern, letting your supervisor, your principal, vice principal know that you're considering the role. Oh, maybe they're the type of person then who is going to help with your mentoring and support you in that growth. I know that not everyone feel comfortable, like you said, letting their administrator know that they're thinking about this role. And at what time, like, you think that that conversation could be had between somebody interested in becoming a principal?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some natural times in the school year that lend itself to having some candid conversations with your administrators. During teacher evaluation time is a good time, but that doesn't happen. It's on a 5-year cycle where
It's a
we are.
slow, yeah, it's a slow
Slow
burn
burn
there.
there. Yeah, we don't get that chance, but we offer opportunities for people to like kind of sub in for the principals when we're not in the building. And when people raise their hand for that, it makes me think, well, they must be interested at some level of having that responsibility anyway, because they have a lot of responsibility when they step into that, and a lot less assurances than we do for walking into a school and kind of taking it on as a teacher, right? So that's one spot where I think it's a good time to have a conversation if their principal's asking for people interested in being the principal while the principal's away. There's the group that comes forward with that. That might be a group that you're looking at. Also, it depends on the openness of the administrator and their staff. We people can put it in their annual learning plans, maybe that's something that they're looking to do, or get their additional qualification courses so they're able to take their principal qualification courses. That might be something that you read, even not them telling you, but you could read it in their annual learning plans. That's another way that you could find out. And then to answer your other one, when should you sort of ask or talk about it? I think it's nothing wrong with early. There's nothing wrong with early. I feel like when I hear it early from people, and by early, I mean there's still some courses away from actually having their qualifications, that's a great time to talk about some stuff. Great time. It's actually easier probably than if they've already got the qualifications, right? To talk about some things they could be working on. The earlier, the better. And it's never really too early if it's something that's on your mind. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I wasn't one that knew that was going to be my path right from the beginning. I didn't come into the education and say I want to be a principal. That's not how I started. It evolved kind of over time. But some people early on, they think like that's what I want to do. And it could be for a lot of reasons. And I've learned to not judge people for that. If that's what they're interested in, if that's their passion to lead people, if that's where their heart is and their mindset is, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, right? We're not judging. And maybe they've got someone in their family that had that role and they just always saw themselves as that in that role or in that position. Or they maybe, had a great principal somewhere where they were that inspired them to be where they're going, right? I think I told you before, I had a student once in my grade 12 class. He told me he was a valedictorian at our school, and he told me his goal was to be a superintendent. I've never heard anyone say that before. Wow, that's interesting. And I think there was someone in his family who was connected to someone who was in that role. So it's kind of what people see. So the earlier the better, in my mind, to ask that question or start having those conversations, because then you got like a long runway to work on stuff if someone actually is going to give you advice, right? And just to be open to that advice. If you have put that out there into the world, like people are going to you got to be prepared for what might come back, but just have that initial courage to just get it out, tell someone, and then see what that brings.
Okay, I got one more that I want to unpack. Again, said a lot there early on, and that's like what people can do when they're starting to discern. And so I had a teacher come and ask me about that this past week. That they're starting to think about that role and what can they do in the meantime. They're still discerning. It's not like they were saying yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to apply to this role the next time a job posting goes out, but they're just thinking about it. And I'll share just a couple of things that I said, but it really started with, continue to lead in the ways you do outside your classroom or welcome people into your classroom. Because for me, when you're going from being a classroom teacher, you're starting to think about a bigger picture, right? You're thinking about maybe your department, if you're leading a department, but in some way you have to start thinking beyond where you're at right now, at least think in terms of whole school direction and leadership, or sometimes in system leadership too, and how you could support schools everywhere. Because Jordan, I got to be honest with you, I really think the principal role is not just about supporting your own school. I think it's about supporting all the high schools or all the schools in your district, in your community as well, and how you're going to be a community builder, right? So I think that's the big thing. Like start looking at the trees, not at individual students in your class. Well, certainly that's important, but start to look at students in whole and as a whole and how we support students everywhere and support teachers everywhere. Continue to find leadership opportunities that point you in that direction.
Yeah, that's a great point. The other thing we didn't mention really about the role, and it's not the same everywhere. I know there's obviously different systems all over the place. We actually have some people that listen, not in Canada. I was checking on the bus route there. It was kind of cool. But there's obviously different systems and setups for administrators and school leaders all over the world. But where we are, we tend not to stay in a school forever as a principal, right? So I think that is also a hesitation point for some people pursuing leadership. And that's a very valid question, but it's just the nature of our cyclical nature of our retirements and whatever we have, that people do move around a lot. So how comfortable are people with doing that? But to your point about, thinking about people on the whole and developing people on the whole, it can't just be about developing like your own people and being comfortable with that forever. It's about developing anybody that's in front of you. Because you never know where you're going to be, right? And one of my favorite ones, that's Inky Johnson. I think I can't remember if he played at Texas, but he would say like bloom where you're planted, right? And I think as administrator, you're going to be planted in a few different places, right? Like you said, it's not just for your school or just for your department or just for your admin team. Like you could be doing that for a while, and guess what? Boom, you're going to be planted somewhere else. So what are you going to do then? Now you got new people. Is it just, are you going to shut it down, or are you going to treat them like you just treated the people that you were with, and develop and keep developing and developing? Because that is the mindset I think that people are going to need, especially as we go in this current climate. We get moved around, but we have to be comfortable with that and just focus on developing people in the entire system, not just the people we like, not just the people that we vibe with, but everyone, right? And that's not an easy task, but that's the skill set people are going to need, I believe.
Well said. Okay. Do you have anything you want to add? Any last words here?
Well, a few things, but we'll keep it brief. Leafs won last night. That was pretty good.
Get out of here.
There's a
We can
big hockey
let's
fight. A big hockey fight yesterday I saw though.
let's edit that out of the pod.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Well, I had one more thing to add. It was about yeah, like obviously you talked about a few steps, just being a few steps ahead, getting information for people that are a few steps ahead. So someone that could be looking to you for guidance or questions would be someone that probably is like thinking about their PQP, their principal qualification courses, or taking it and deciding whether they're going to, you know, apply to this amazing role that we have the privilege of having. What would you like? What would be your parting words to those people? Like, is it worth it?
Is it for the right person, to be
Yes,
quite honest? And I know that's a non-answer, right? But of course it is.
it's
And
an
I don't
answer.
think
It's still an
either,
answer. It's still an answer.
we I get asked all the time if I miss teaching. I do. And of course the answer is yes. And I find that I'm still doing that in this role, like you're saying, leading people, and there's a lot of mentoring and coaching that happens. And a lot of it is one-on-one, whether that's with students or staff, sometimes with families. And I think it's quite a rewarding job. I feel like it's one of the best kept secrets out there, and it's hard to take that leap of faith. But I would say do your research, talk to the different people who are ahead of you and see if it's right for you. And look for opportunities to learn more about it. Like you're saying, maybe participate in that delegation of authority or teacher in charge, where you're stepping in to support administrators when they're out of the building. Connect with different people and see where it takes you.
That's great advice. That was really good what you said there. It's good for the right person. That was pretty smooth. That was smooth. That's a good line. Yeah, I like that.
Thanks. You
Okay,
can
well, I
use
guess
it anytime.
it's good. It's great. It's honestly, like you just said, there's so many joys that I think part of our reflecting, our practice needs to be that as well, right? Like I know it sounds kind of like whatever, cliche and hoaxy, but like really, like there's so much to be grateful for, and the gratitude that we have for like what people might not see as like little big things. Like I see some like amazing things happening that I'm just very grateful for every day, and I think you really need to be intentional about recognizing it, letting it seep in a little bit, because there's going to be harder days too, right? So if you look, there's some amazing things happening.
Agreed.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
So for the right person, come on over. You can do it.
That's right. Come
Yeah.
on. There's some room on this
There's
side. And it's quite a rewarding career, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So, to everyone out there, thank you for listening to Becoming the Principal podcast. We are grateful for the time you have spent with us, and we hope we've been helpful in some way. Be sure to check out our Instagram at Becoming a Principal podcast. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Good job.